Robots today using a giant pair of shears to cut that damaged riser pipe deep in the Gulf of Mexico. Coast Guard Admiral Allen briefing this morning that the shears making a more jagged cut than the saw would have, so placing a cap over it will now be more challenging, and the top hat cap will not fit as snugly as officials would like. Of course, that did not stop the CEO, Mr. Hayward, from calling just the cut a milestone.
Over the last 36 hours, we have cleared the riser from the top of the wellhead, and the team is currently working to complete the cleanup operation before we put the cap onto the top of the well. And it's an important milestone, and in some senses, of course, it's just the beginning.
Yet, in an interview with the Financial Times, Mr. I would like my life back, admitting that BP was not totally prepared for and lacked some of the essential equipment to deal with the massive oil disaster it created in the Gulf. Quoting, "What is undoubtedly true is that we did not have the tools you would want in your toolkit." He then patted his own company on the back for its containment measures on the surface, adding, "Considering how big this has been, very little has got away from us." Here is something that has gotten away from BP, its cover-up effort on the shores of the Gulf. Journalists from multiple news organizations reporting that they have been blocked from taking photographs of dead animals on the beaches of the Gulf. These devastating pictures taken by Charlie Rydell of the Associated Press. In some cases, cops and local contractors who are blocking access and leading them away, telling them that they are acting on the orders of BP. In fact, the contract local boat operators signed before being hired by BP expressly forbids them from talking to the media. One contractor telling the New York Daily News they specifically informed us that they did not want these pictures of the dead animals. They know the ocean will wipe away most of the evidence. If only the ocean really could do that. It's obviously killing wildlife, despite the best efforts by BP to cover this up. We're seeing the pictures now. Does anybody have an idea of the current extent of that, or has this extraordinary combination of BP thugs and actually police and other authorities, has this essentially made it impossible to judge how bad the flora and fauna situation is?
Yeah, it's bad. There's a lot of oil. It's starting to come to shore. Of course, a lot of the impact is still offshore and in the water, so it's a little out of sight, out of mind to people. But the oil that's starting to come to shore is extensive. And yeah, we were run off beaches and away from oiled inshore areas weeks ago by BP thugs, and saying that they're operating on the orders of the Coast Guard or BP, and obviously they don't want the images on the evening news. So, but the wildlife impacts have been extensive. The number of dead carcasses that have been collected is just a minute fraction, perhaps 10 to 20% of the number of dead animals, which generally almost always drift down into the water column and sink.
About drifting, the National Center for Atmospheric Research released a simulation of what it thinks could happen if the so-called loop current, the thing in the Gulf of Mexico, picks up the oil, that it could reach the Atlantic coastline of Florida, the other side of Florida within weeks. It could spread up as far as Cape Hatteras in North Carolina and then moves out in the open ocean. It's not a solid prediction according to the NCAR, but it's a possible scenario. Is it a probable scenario in your opinion?
Oh yeah, I think it's probable, particularly if this containment cap doesn't work and the blowout, which we know the blowout will keep going for the next couple of months until the relief wells get down there and kill this thing. So if the cap doesn't work, we're going to have 3 times the amount of oil in the Gulf of Mexico. But I think some of the oil has already entered the loop current. We've heard evidence of that. It will go around the southern tip of Florida. And, you know, ironically, some of these tar balls will go towards the UK in the North Atlantic Drift. And so some of the oil from BP will be returned to British Petroleum in the UK.